We continue now at the top of Daf Pei-Aleph Amid Beis in Mesechet Kesuvos. This is Kesuvos Daf 81b. On the previous Amid, the Gemara was discussing the issue of Nitna Ksuba Ligvos Mechayim, or Lo Nitna Ksuba Ligvos Mechayim. Is the Ksuba collectible while the Yavam is alive or not? And so the Gemara asked from a Braisa, because the Braisa said that let's say the Yavam wants to sell the property that's mortgaged for her Ksuba. So the solution is he can divorce her, and then he'll be able to sell that property. And so the Gemara says, Visalka Daita Nitna Ksuba Ligvos Mechayim. If you think that the Ksuba is already considered collectible during his lifetime, so niyachid lo shir ksuba, let him just designate for her metaltalin that is the value of the ksuba, v'hashar lizvin, and then he could sell whatever property he wants. So it seems from the brayso that lo nitna ksuba ligvos mechayim. But the Gemara continues, but according to your reasoning, we can ask the same question from the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah said, he can't say to her that the ksuba, your ksuba is set aside for you on the table, and therefore he can do what he wants with the property. Rather, all of his property is mortgaged for the ksuba. So it's the exact same thing. Again, if we're going to say nitna ksuba ligvos mechayim, why can't he say that? Why can't he undo the mortgage by designating metaltalin for the ksuba? And the Gemara answers, no, Hassam over there in the Mishnah, it's a tova kamashmal, and the Mishnah is just giving good advice. It's better not to designate metaltalin for the ksuba. Something could happen to the metaltalin, but really, of course, he might be able to designate the metaltalin for the ksuba if he wanted to. And the Gemara proves this, because if you don't say this, seifa de katani. What about the end of the Mishnah, which says, v'chein lo yomar adam leishto harei ksubasech munachas lach al hashulchan. There it's talking about a regular situation of a marriage, not a hibum, and it says a person should not say to his wife, here is your ksuba placed on the table. Rather, all of his property is considered mortgage for the ksuba of his wife. So, now what do you think the Mishnah means over there? Does it mean that he can't sell any of his property ever? If he wanted to sell it, he's not able to? Of course it doesn't mean that. And rather what it is, it's telling good advice. It's better to keep property rather than to sell it, because again, metaltalin is not something, it's not a good thing to designate for the ksuba. And therefore, hachanami, it's a tova kamashmalan. So here also, it's just an eitzah tova. So therefore, from the Mishnah, we really don't have a question. But the Gemara continues, but the Bryce of Rabbi Abba, that still is difficult. And so the Gemara answers to that, the Rabbi Abba nami lo kasha, Rabbi Abba, the Bryce from before, that's also not a question, mishum eva, because that would create a situation of eva, of hatred. Meaning to say, if he would take something and designate it and say, this is for your ksuba, and he would tell that to the Yavama, so then it would seem that he's really trying to divorce her. It would look like he's trying to set her up for divorce. It would create a hatred. Whereas if it's the other way around, if he divorces her just in order to sell the property, it's clear that his ultimate goal is just a way to try to sell the property. He's not trying to separate himself from her. Rashi over here says, Mishum Eva, it's because of hatred. What do we mean to say? Hamiyachid l'ishto a karko metaltalin. If a person's going to designate for his wife karko or metaltalin, so nosan evas olam beinayim, then he's already creating hatred between them. To savra einav nosein begerishin, because now she thinks, oh, why is he doing this? He wants to divorce me. But here, where he actually is divorcing her, but he's saying, I'm doing it, but I'm going to remarry you, take you right back. So then she knows it was all done just in order to sell the property. And that actually gets rid of the hatred. That's why the solution in the Bryce of Rabbi Abba is actually a preferred solution. And the Gemara continues, there was an individual, and a Yavama fell before him. She was a Shomeres Yavam. They were waiting to do Yibam b'Pumbedisa. This happened in Pumbedisa. Now, the individual's brother, he actually wanted to disqualify her to his brother by giving her a get. The halach is, if one of the brothers gives a get, so the other brother is not able to do Yibam. So he wanted to create this disqualification. Rashi over here says, the younger brother wanted get. He wanted to throw her a get. And that way it would forbid her to all of the brothers. That's what this brother wanted to do. And so the Gemara continues, Amar lei, so he said to him, the older brother said to the younger brother, my daitach, so what is your reasoning? Why is it that you want to disqualify her from Yibum? And so the Gemara continues, Mishum nichse, is it because of the property? You're jealous of the fact that I'm going to inherit all of our dead brother's property. I'm going to actually divide the property with all the brothers. You don't need to worry. That should not be a concern. In any case, what happened was they did the Ibum, and now they came before the court because he no longer wanted to distribute the property among the brothers. And so the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef says, what's the ruling? Kevon do Amar Rabbanan, since the Rabbanan said, Lo Lizvin, that in a situation of a Shomeres Yavam, the brother is not allowed to sell any of the property. So once we know that he's not allowed to sell any of the property, Afagav de Zavin lo have his vine. So even b'di'evet, if he tries to sell, it's not going to be a good sale. Saying you're going to split the property is the same thing as a sale, and therefore that was not effective when he said that, and therefore he has no obligation to split the property. Rashi over here says, I'm going to divide it as if there was a chalitza. I'm going to take the same amount as everyone else. I'll take the same amount as you. But we already said by a shomeres yavam, the yavam is not allowed to sell. That's what we're going to say later on. So even if you do b'di'evet, it's not going to be good. This condition that he made, even if they made a condition and made a kinyan on the condition to divide, hareu kamocher, that's no different than a seller, and it's not going to be effective. Again, lo have zvine, it's not going to be a good sale, and therefore Rav Yosef said this yavam is entitled to keep all of the property. And the Gemara continues, the Tanya, as we learned in a brisa, misha meis v'hiniach shomeres yavam. Let's say someone dies and he leaves over a wife and she's a shomeres yavam. V'hiniach nechasim b'meya mana, and he leaves over property, it's 100 mana. Afal pi sheksubasa eino ela mana. Even if her ksuba is only a mana, much less than the amount of property, lo yimchor, he cannot sell the property, even though he has an abundance of property. Shakal nechasav achroin lechsubasa, because all of his property is mortgaged for the ksuba. Again, the same thing over here. The sale is no good. And so the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaye. So Abaye said to him, Abaye responded to Rav Yosef, is that really true that anytime the Rabbanan say a person can't sell something, so when he does sell it, it's not a good sale, that even b'di'evet, it's not a good sale? But we learned in a Mishnah, this was talking about by a situation of, let's say you have an arusa, so Beis Shammai say she can sell the property, Beis Hillel say she cannot sell the property, but both agree that if she does sell b'di'evet, if she does give away the property b'di'evet, it is going to be a good transaction. So you see over here, according to Beis Hillel, you have a situation where she's not allowed to sell, but b'di'evet, it's a good sale. Maybe that's the same thing. Maybe the same thing is true by a yavam in a situation of a shomeres yavam. And so the Gemara continues, Shalchu l'kami de Rabbi Chanina bar Papi. They sent this question in front of Rabbi Chanina bar Papi. Shalcha k'de Rav Yosef, and he sent back the answer like Rav Yosef. He said even b'di'evet, the sale is not going to be effective. And so the Gemara continues, Amar Abaye said, Atur Rabbi Chanina bar Papi kipi tola. To Rabbi Chanina bar Papa, did he hang jewelry on this ruling? Means to say, just because he said the halach is like Rav Yosef, if he gave no reason for it, so therefore it's not worth anything. It doesn't add anything to the discussion. Kipi tola. Did he hang jewelry by this ruling? There's no reason given for it. It doesn't help us. And so the Gemara continues, Shalchu l'kami de Rav Menyume brei de Rav Nechume. So they sent the same question in front of Rav Menyume, the son of Rav Nechume. And Shalcha k'de Abaye. So he sent back that the ruling actually is like Abaye, that b'di'evet the sale would be a good sale. However, he said, V'yamar bar Rav Yosef taima achrina shalchu li. But if Rav Yosef gives some other reason, some other support for his ruling, send it to me, and then I will reevaluate. And so the Gemara continues, Nafak Rav Yosef went out, Dok ve'eshkach, he searched, and he found a brisa which supported his position. The Tanyas we learned in a brisa, let's say in a situation where one brother lent another brother money, and so now one brother owes the other brother money, and now the brother who was the lender, he dies. And he leaves over a wife, and she's now a shomeres yavam, and so one of the brothers is now the yavam, and he's supposed to marry the shomeres yavam. And now what happens in a normal case is that all the property of the brother who died, that's mortgaged for her ksuba, even though that property really goes to the yavam, but it's mortgaged towards the ksuba, he's not supposed to sell it. And so the brisa says, Lo Yomar. So now this brother who's the borrower, he shouldn't say, Hoel v'shani yoresh, since anyways I'm inheriting all the property, hachzakti. So I don't owe the money. I'm inheriting all of my dead brother's property anyway, so I don't owe him any money anymore, so I'll keep my money. We don't do that. Elamotziin mi yavam, rather we take the money, we collect the money from the yavam, v'yikach ben karka, and we have to purchase land, v'ochel peres, and he takes the fruits, meaning we have to treat it like all the other property that he's inheriting. All the other the property that he's inheriting, it is true that he's the inheritor. However, it's all mortgaged for her ksuba. He's not allowed to sell it, as we said, and that's true of this debt as well. He can't just keep the money from the debt. Rather, we take this money, we buy land. He, of course, will inherit this land, but ultimately, it's mortgaged for the ksuba. We have to treat it just like anything else. And so Rav Yosef says this seems to be a proof, because here you have a situation over here where we're saying he's not allowed to keep the money. Rather, he has to convert that money into land which is mortgaged, which he cannot sell. And it seems to be saying that even b'di'evet, even after the fact, because in this case it really is an after the fact situation, he already has the money in his pocket, but even after the fact we make him convert that money into land, and we say that it's all mortgaged for the ksuba, he cannot touch the land. And so the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaye. So Abaye said back to him, to Rav Yosef, Dilma de Tavale Avdule. Maybe the Bryce has nothing to do with what you're talking about. It's just advice. It's just saying when you have money, it's better to convert it into land and eat the fruits. That way you won't lose the money. But it's not saying that he has to actually do this. So the Gemara says, Amar le, so Rav Yosef said back to Abaye, Tana Tani Motzian. The Tani uses the language of we take the money out of his possession. Viata Amrit de Tavale Avdule. And you're saying that the Bryce means to say that we're giving him some good advice. Here's what you should do with your free money. You should convert it into real estate, convert it into property. That doesn't make any sense. And so the Gemara now continues, Hadar Shalchua Kame de Rav Menyuma B'rei de Rav Nechume. So then they again sent the question to Rav Menyuma B'rei de Rav Nechume, and they said, now Rav Yosef does have his support for himself. He has this brisa. So Amar Lahu, so he said back to them, Hachi Amar Rav Yosef bar Menyume Amar Rav Nachman. This is what Rav Yosef bar Menyume said, that Rav Nachman said, Zu Eina Mishnah, that this brisa that you're quoting, it's not authoritative. There's something wrong with this brisa anyhow. And the Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason why we say this brisa is not authoritative? If you're going to say the reason is because this is all really metaltalin, and metaltalin aren't meshubed for the ksuba anyway. In other words, what are we saying over here? That this money, this debt over here should suddenly be converted into something that's meshubed for the ksuba. Ultimately, it's metaltalin. It's not meshubed for the ksuba anyway. Why should he have to convert that into something that's meshubed for the ksuba? If you're going to say that's the reason why it's Eina Mishnah, but Dilma Rabbi Meir, it's not true. Maybe this Bryce is following Rabbi Meir. Dilma Metaltlin Meshavdi L'Ksuba. Rabbi Meir happens to hold that Metaltlin are Meshubid for the Ksuba. And Rashi over here explains, Dilma Rabbi Meir Masnisin de Katani. This was Rabbi Meir in the Mishnah that says, Gave Ksafim Uperos Telushin. He talks about, let's say there's cash, or let's say there's fruits that are detached from the ground. He says the same idea. Yilkach ben Karka, you have to take that, let's say that's inherited from the dead brother. You have to take that and purchase land. V'afilu lo tafsa. And even in a situation where she hasn't yet taken possession of it, but still you got to convert it into land, and we say it is meshubed for the ksuba. Almi meshabdi l'ksubasa. You see that these metaltlin are meshubed for the ksuba. Ve'afilu lo kaimalam Rabbi Meir. And Rashi points out, even if we don't hold like this sheet of Rabbi Meir, but in this particular case, miyu gave motzian, but nevertheless, in our bryce over here, where we're talking about a debt which we're going to take from him and convert it into land, lekaman de polagime karkoininu. There, nobody would argue. They wouldn't even argue against Rabbi Meir in that situation. Uliola Mishni, and really it is authoritative. In this particular case, we're going to say there is a sheet of Rabbi Meir out there that metalton is meshubed l'ksuba, and so in this situation, it's very possible to say, according to everyone, this kind of metaltalin will be meshubed for the ksuba. And so the Gemara continues, V'ela, rather, the reason why this Bryce is not considered authoritative, Mishum Da'amar Lo, it's because he says to her, At lav balas devarim didiyat. You're not really the Baal Dover against me. In other words, I owed the money to my brother who's now dead. You're just the widow of that brother. Really, you have no claim against me anyhow on that money, and therefore it is not necessary for me to take this money, buy property, and mortgage it towards the ksuba. Rashi says, in a Mishnah V'tos haya, Mishashad, it's got to be a mistake. Mishum dematzi amarla, because the Yavam can always say to the Yavama, Lav balas devarim didiyat. You're not the person who's the litigant against me. I never borrowed from you. I borrowed from my brother. Therefore, there's no way that this money that is owed has to be mortgaged towards your ksuba. And we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Beis Amud Aleph.